But I think always the question I've asked is, what's the larger purpose? What's the objective we're trying to achieve? What's the first principles of it? And if we're clear about the larger purpose, the larger objective, and the principles that are germane to that decision making, and if you have the ability to take risk and not afraid of failing, I think somewhere the answer, the choice, the decision stares at you, looks at you, speaks to you, I believe. Your heart, to your soul, it speaks to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, here's a paradox for you. How does someone who built the world's largest carbon black company stay humble? How does a gentleman who's got the Eisenhower Fellowship and 4 academic gold medals still remain curious? And how does a man who served on the boards of India's biggest companies still find time to contribute for tribal communities and farmers? Welcome to Luminary Lounge, where we unpack these beautiful contradictions of lives well lived. I'm your host today, Murli, and today's guest, Dr. Santrupt Misra, is a NIPM Ratna Award winner, 2-time PhD holder, and one of Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla's earliest hires for the Aditya Birla Group, and he embodies every paradox that makes a life truly luminous. With over 3 decades of transforming how we think about leadership and human potential, he is here with us to share what he's learned along the way. And this conversation is about resilience, wisdom, and the courage to keep evolving and learning. So let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Dr. Mishra.
Thank you, Dr. Mulle. Good to meet you. Namaskar.
Namaste, sir. Namaste. Now, before we dive into your remarkable career, let's start with something that I overheard on the grapevine, that you are quite a film enthusiast. Just to start the conversation, can you just tell us the last film that completely captivated you, and did it offer any unexpected parallels to your leadership journey?
Well, that's a tough one. And to be very honest, many films captivated me through my life, some for their comedy, some for their cinematography, some for their stunts, some for their music, some for the theme and the treatment of the theme, many reasons. But I don't think films in particular, are meant for life lessons. I think films imitate life. But having said that, I would say any film that depicted human effort and endeavor, any film that talked about great amount of commitment by the protagonist, any film that talked about deep relationships, enduring friendships, themes of courage, they always resonated with.
Anything in particular that comes to your mind, sir, when you think about?
Very unfair to other film producers if I single out one. I think the truth is that the global film industry, the film industry in India, the whole of India, not just Bollywood, south of India,
Yes,
and as
yes,
well as
yes.
the regional languages, Bengali cinema in Odisha, and Gujarati, Marathi cinema, plays, all of them have so much of meaning and relevance. It would be very unfair to single out anyone, even though I may have one or two.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see during the conversation if I'm able to kind of pick one favorite of yours. But I'm just curious about your upbringing in Odisha and how your early experiences during childhood shaped your worldview. Can you just talk to us about a little bit about these formative moments in your life and how it influenced to become the person that you are?
Well, that would be a story of close to 60 years of my life, And but having said that, I basically come from a family of professionals, academicians, civil servants, doctors, and even in my extended family, very rarely we had people in private sector or people in entrepreneurship. What that basically meant is that I grew up with a bunch of well educated, well informed people, and often, thanks to my dad, the discussions were around freedom struggle, discussions were around the formation of the constitution, the politics of India, the pain of independent India post independence. And so my exposure mostly in early childhood was about stories, about books. Father was a professor, so exposure was to libraries, famous professors, many of whom I had the privilege of meeting. They may not, some of them were globally renowned, some of them were locally very uh, well known names. The second part of influence and formative days was exposure to unique situations. Transferable job of dad and getting onto a truck with a truckload of household goods with him to travel from place A to place B, living in the middle of what could be considered as a paddy field in a private residence rented by my dad, where water supply non-existent. You got to take water from outside and bring home. Flooding my hands with multiple experiences such as shopping from large vegetable market, fish market, grocery market for my mother, things including buying firewood in those days and having bought Amul spray during scarcity days and black market for my niece and nephew. Range of dirtying my hands at early childhood also shaped my worldview. Traveled to as a young school kids to Chennai, to Bangalore. So diversity I got exposed to very early on. So never were confined to Odisha. So and a lot of visits to different temples, the architecture, the culture. I used to buy as a child a chanda mama from a gentleman who was visually challenged. How at 9:30 in the night he would come and exactly know where our house was because of walking with his stick, and connecting with him broadened my view around diversity, etc. Very early, I didn't know the word at that time.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
who are differently abled, etc. These expressions came much to my life later. But the experience I had, I once wrote for a visually challenged student his exam papers who was senior to me. I was a bright student, and therefore the invigilator decided to stand on our head so that I don't use my excellence, so-called excellence, to write something. I didn't understand what a sadistic pleasure he got by preventing me from writing few lines if I could write in addition to him. But I realized that the world is made of different types, and I used to compete with my dad to get the single Odia newspaper that we used to receive at home. They used to throw the late edition to our campus, and my dad and I had two different doors that we'd rush out to get that single newspaper, who would be the first one to read. So, competitive spirit with dad, all of that shaped my formative years in many, many ways.
And your academic journey is quite remarkable. Nowadays, we do see people coming out with PhDs, but during those days, PhD was a very, very big thing. I mean to say, very few people were graduating, very few people were actually doing their post graduation. And you have two PhDs, multiple gold medals. What sparked this intellectual curiosity, and how has your academic background in multiple fields such as political science, industrial relationships, informed your leadership approach, I might say?
Well, I must be honest to say, I don't think all of that was driven by any intellectual curiosity. Everybody, all of us, I believe, including me, are a product of set of series of happy accidents and coincidences that happened. As I graduated from my school, 11th class, we used to have board exam. I did score 95 in maths and 82% in science. Of course, if I say 82% I scored in science, today's generation students would laugh, saying, what a worst student, he's 82% he scored. But in 1978, 82% was a huge amount of
Huge amount,
all right.
yeah.
But though I scored well, I never enjoyed science. Why? My only deliberate choice at one point in time was liberal arts. And thereafter, of course, because I didn't enjoy maths, didn't want to take GMAT and all to go to the typical MBA side, decided for various reasons not to join civil services or compete there, but build out my own something different. So I landed up at Tata Institute of Social Sciences. I enjoyed its kind of methodology of education and training. And of course, so all of that. But what the net result of it, as you want to know, is that I have developed this ability to look at issues from an interdisciplinary lens: economics, psychology, sociology, anthropology, And I think I do not hold a dogmatic view of the world. I am able to appreciate the prism of life and world, if I may say, the different hues, the different colors, and therefore I think my educational background made me very broad. And my PhD helped me to be deep and the ability to go deep into a subsection of a subsection to be able to know more. But yes, uh, in the process, did it kind of whet my curiosity? Absolutely. I learned that there is so much to learn about world life, etc. That one cannot just stop learning, and therefore even till today I continue to learn different things. You do not know what is not on my CV, as I tried to do a law degree in between, and I did the first semester exam, and thereafter I had to give up because neither my family nor my company, none of them were willing to understand as to why I wanted to do a law degree. So,
Now, the other question, which is again, when it comes up when you see somebody with 2 PhDs and 4 gold medals, is you expect them to become a professor or, continue in academia, be in the university. But then you shifted gears and came to corporate and became one of the very, very well-known leaders in the corporate world. And what unexpected challenges did you face when entering the business world from academia? And did this academic uh, bent of mind, I can call it, the PhDs, the gold medals, help you or hinder you in this transition? Because I'm sure many of them would be, those who are listening to us, many of them might be in the academic world, debating whether they should shift gears and move. So, any
I think
any
that's a
insights
great
there?
question. First of all, it's a matter of personal preference. What do you want to do and how? The first thing is, even in the world of academia, I was well connected with industry because data institutes education took me always close to a field practice where one had to spend, in a 2-year program with 5 companies. So you remain connected with corporate. Even when I was teaching at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, I designed training program and, consulting. For many companies I was connected. Even during my second PhD in England, 2 of my units of study were Cadbury's and ICI, 2 of world's very large companies and their factories. So until I moved into industry back, in some ways, industry and corporate world were embedded into my academic context and environment, so to speak. So therefore, I think at one level, the transition was not difficult. It was easy. But yes, at every point of my career and turn, there were always skepticism and judgment. Would I be able to do well? Would I succeed? Can I make the shift? Academia to, because I started with industry, first work, was with paper industry, moved to academia, moved back to industry. Then within industry from Unilever, India to move to Aditya Birla Group, which was Indian entrepreneurial company. Within Aditya Birla Group from human resources, when I moved to running businesses, both carbon black and chemicals. Uh, I think there was always question mark and a judgment, a skepticism about would I be able to do well, would I succeed? And every time there was such question marks that kind of furthered my resolve, my self-confidence. I had to dip into that to see that I succeed and do well. But going back to your question, did my academic framework, does it help? It absolutely helps because I am able to connect the world of practice with foundational basic principles and concepts. I think I have always believed in what Thomas Hobbes wrote in Leviathan in 15th, 14th, 15th century, perhaps, about having philosopher kings. So, he said world's problems will be solved if kings were philosophers and philosophers were kings. In some ways, your being pure practitioner or being pure academic perhaps would not make me as I am by creating a blended, formula to it. And the last sentence I would say is that I've often joked with my family, friends, and others saying, I'm a manager, a corporate guy by profession, but I'm a teacher at heart. So I think, the other way would have been more dangerous, I suspect. But,
And a great human being, I'm sure. Coming to your journey with the Aditya Birla Group, sir, for our listeners who do not know the depth and breadth of Aditya Birla Group, it, if I'm not mistaken, operates in close to 36 countries, has got more than 140, 150,000 people working. And I think it's one of the few Indian conglomerates which has truly a global footprint. And I'm sure in the Harvard Business Review, it has been quoted as one of the best in class when it comes to development programs. So, coming to your leadership philosophy, you spent a lot of time with this group. How did it evolve during this period, and what fundamental principles of leadership remain constant throughout?
I joined at the age of 30, and I'm close to 60 now. This 30 years would be the best years of any human being to be able to, learn,
Very true.
contribute, and
Very true.
realize who you are. I really truly discovered myself as to who I am and who I can be during these 30 years with the close to 3 decades with the Aditya Birla Group. I'm most grateful to the company and the chairman, Mr. Birla, and the larger ecosystem for creating so many opportunities for me. And I think it was a phenomenal journey. Coming to the leadership part of it, there are different ways it shaped my leadership because one was that as I grew up, I read two kinds of leadership issues. One is leadership of sacrifice. Mahatma Gandhi, the freedom movement, people who gave up many things to fight for India. There was a leadership of sacrifice. And then you read about great heroes, the leadership of heroic achievements. The Aditya Birla Group experience with Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla and his great grandfather, reading about him, G.T. Birla, and his father, Aditya Vikram Birla, who I had never had the privilege of meeting in his lifetime because I joined Kumar Mangalam after late Aditya Vikram Birla had passed away. Uh, late Mr. B.K. Birla, Mr. Sarla Birla, even Kumar Mangalamji's mother, Rashri Birla. I saw that between sacrifice and heroics, there's a middle ground where you can combine some amount of sacrifice and some amount of heroics. So, thinking of G.D. Birla's vision, for example, Aditya Birla's risk-taking ability to take India to the world outside India, Kumar Mangalam's own evolution as their leader, because he was 28 when unfortunate circumstances he took over, but did a marvelous job over his journey and continues to do so. And then, as you can realize, I'm no longer a part of the group, but I am not obliged to say great things, but truly a great institution that has been built under the leadership of Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla and his predecessors as well. So I think I realized that even Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla's evolution as a leader, when I watched, I realized that leadership is an evolution. It is not a fixed frame, cookie cutter, one size fits all and all context issue. So I think what it did is kept on evolving me as a leader as well. But what remained with me as a leader always, the idea of a commitment, idea of risk taking, idea of serving other people, the whole idea of leadership being both invisible and being on the forefront. There's both kinds of leadership.
Very well said, sir. Daniel Goleman, who has popularized emotional intelligence in the last 2 to 3 decades, found that in his research, 90% of the difference between star performers and average ones, especially in senior leadership roles, is due to emotional intelligence and not technical skills. And throughout your career, you have emphasized the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership. Could you share a few examples of where this emotional awareness significantly altered the outcome of, say, a challenging situation or one of those leadership dilemmas that you face?
So, to me, emotional intelligence is summarized by a famous sentence I read somewhere which said, it is not what life does to you, it is how you react to what life does to you. Emotional intelligence is about how you react. Human beings are a bundle of emotions. They will always have emotions. Different people will have different ways of expressing that. So, being emotionally intelligent to me means that two things fundamentally. You have an internal antenna that triggers a signal to tell you to be aware as to how you feel. And is there an external antenna to pick up signals from other people around you? How they seeming to be feeling and how they seeming to be responding or reacting. And the third part of emotional intelligence is making a choice as to which elements of your emotion you leverage in a particular context, which emotions or signals you're receiving from outside that you need to respond to. And if you can make those right choices, then I think you make a great use of emotional intelligence to address issues around you. I have many examples. In human resources as a role, to me, people will come with their pain points. I have to sometimes anticipate that even company decision making, how will it impact or what feeling it will create in people's mind. So I think there was a case in a particular group company where some outside directors and shareholders were there. And as I took over the responsibility for that company, I found that several directors were upset about something that happened in the company in terms of governance and how they think was transparency or not or whatever. And their angst was about one individual, and partly about the system. And the first time when I walked into the board meeting, I saw, well, boy, this is, a hostile bunch of people, hostile about an institution and a system. I have no sense of history as to why they are hostile, what's truth, what is not truth. So my first reaction to them was that, look, I understand that you have a point of pain. I can't turn the clock of history, but we can all together work towards a new beginning. What I can do is assure you how I will operate and what you can expect from me and not expect from me. And I will stick to what I commit to you. I think within a couple of board meetings, I think I enjoyed their trust. I enjoyed their support. I had to make few tweaks in the way the process was being managed to extend my goodwill and my sincerity, and people responded. So I have learned about emotional intelligence is that there have been many such situations one has to deal with. Once you are same organization for close to 3 decades, every day such issues are presented to you. And I learned is I think one important part of emotional intelligence is your authenticity and sincerity in dealing with things.
And also, the other thing that we come across when we talk to top leaders such as you is it gets lonely at the top, right? You don't have many people where you can bounce ideas across. And also, many leaders do struggle with vulnerability. Now, have there been any moments in your career where showing vulnerability from your end actually strengthened your leadership position rather than weakening it?
I think one segment of your authenticity is always your vulnerability. If people see that you are kind of subject to always hubris and you are unable to be self-aware and you are unable to express it, people see through it. So in fact, after I left a few months ago, a former colleague, she wrote a LinkedIn post without using my name, but privately wrote back to me saying that incident, Dr. Mishra, is about you. I just felt hesitant to write your name. And the whole incident was about vulnerability, that I apparently had a deadline of submitting something on a Monday, and the team had to work. And I forgot to tell them to prepare. I was overseas traveling. I came back on a Friday. And I called the team apparently and told them that, look, I apologize. First of all, I forgot about it. I should have connected with you. We'll have to work through the weekend to meet this deadline. And I don't wish to push or ask for time for the deadline because of my mistake. I know it will be your commitment of the weekend and time, and I am happy to work with you. Here is how we will do it so that we take less of your time. And apparently, all of this conversation I had. What struck her in her LinkedIn post she said is the fact that I could have simply come and said this is to be done by Monday without accepting that I had somewhere been the cause of their challenge over the weekend. I think there have been many occasions. For example, Mr. Birla told me one first time he gave me business CEO responsibilities, saying, Dr. Mishra, you'll be at the deep end of the pool as far as finance and accounts is concerned. I said, I'm aware. He said, how do you want to deal with it? I said, I will take a senior CFO in the group somewhere as my mentor. And I took somebody and I learned quickly from him. And the mentor one day turned around and told me, Dr. Mishra, you are becoming dangerously knowledgeable in finance and accounts. I presume that was a compliment. But my own CFO, who used to report to me, his name is Surendra Goel, he's still around in the company, God bless his soul. I think he taught me a lot of things about finance and accounts. I always told him that you are my CFO, decision making still is with me, and I will push you and challenge you. But I want to continue to learn with you because I don't understand all the tricks of the trade that you guys use. So I'm not a chemical engineer, not even a chemist. The two businesses I looked after, chemicals and carbon black, were hardcore chemical engineering, and I had to learn everything. But I think when you do not know a subject, I think that you are at the vulnerable best. So the way I used to lead is that there were areas where I would ask a lot of questions, I would challenge and everything, and where I was confident that my colleagues knew more than me, I let them be and lead the way. So leadership is not about you knowing everything more than your colleagues or you being in the forefront about everything. Leadership is about making those choices as to when to let go, when to allow others to lead, and when you cannot shirk your responsibility.
Well said, sir. Now, for those people who do not know what Birla Carbon is, uh, I did a little bit of research and I found that Birla Carbon is the world's largest manufacturer and supplier of carbon black. And it is a material which is used in everything from tires to inks. And to just give you an estimate of how it is used, the company's products are probably found in one in out of every four tires produced globally. Am I right, sir? It is.
Yes,
It is. It's quite commonly used in tires and
everything that you're using, your black, your glass frame, and your if you use hair dye, anything you use would have some amount of carbon black with or without your knowledge.
And you took over as the CEO of Birla Carbon. You led the company to become the world's largest producer of carbon black. Now, you did mention a couple of challenges that you faced initially, but is there anything that you remember which was probably the most complex challenge? And as a leader, how you overcame or how did you navigate it?
Well, when I took over responsibility for carbon black business, we were world number four actually, and after 2009. 2011, we took over the world's third largest carbon black company in the US called Colombian Chemicals. And that footprint in 12 or 13 countries at that time and had about uh, so plants. Now, an Indian company, when you take over a global company in the US, and you were world number four and they were world number three, and you were competing furiously in same markets for same clients, same market share, always obviously there are many challenges. The first challenge was of obviously how do you create value out of this integration? Second challenge obviously was how to service the debt, $850 million of debt I had taken to make that happen. How to service the debt. Number three, how do you hold the team together? This is a multicultural team and a global team. How do you harmonize the systems and processes? Specialty Black was a specialty of the company that we acquired, and how do you leverage that opportunity and potential? There were mutual learning to be had that we could learn more from the acquired company, they could learn from us. How do you help people not to stand on ego of mine, thine, and yet mutually learn and form and coalesce into one strong team? So there were several challenges, and obviously, I'm very proud to say that it's a very valuable company of the Aditya Birla Group today, and significantly in the private domain. We created a lot of value out of it, and we managed to make sure that people stayed long and contributed with the business. It is not just about profitability and revenue, it grew in the eyes of the customer for its stature, for its innovation, for its product quality, service, and everything. So looking back, I'm really truly proud as to what the team did, and I had some contribution to make. And yeah, it was a great learning experience.
And when it comes to taking decisions, there's a lot of analogy which is generally spoken about when it comes to the game of poker and how leaders have to take decisions. That you have incomplete information, and yet the decisions that you take have significant consequences. So, could you walk us through the process of how you would probably make a high stake decision when the path forward isn't clear or you don't have the complete information?
Well, um, as they say, nothing succeeds like success. You take
Yes.
a decision, it succeeds, everybody is applauding you. You
Yes.
take a decision, it doesn't work, people wonder, how the hell anybody entrusted you with the responsibility. But I think always the question I've asked is, what's the larger purpose? What's the objective we're trying to achieve? What's the first principles of it? And if we're clear about the larger purpose, the larger objective, and the principles that are germane to that decision making, and if you have the ability to take risk and not afraid of failing, I think somewhere the answer, the choice, the decision stares at you, looks at you, speaks to you, I believe. Your heart to your soul, it speaks to you. I read somewhere once Mark Zuckerberg said, I think it's an interesting phenomenon. He said, if it is a decision whose impact will be small, short term, or a decision which I can reverse without causing lasting impact on the company, I spend very little time on those. But those decisions that cannot be reversed, have a long term impact or a significant impact, I spend time on thinking about it. There's no right measure of how much time you can spend on a decision. There are split second decisions to be taken. Pilots, for example, or military generals on the war front have to take split second decisions. Doctors, for example, have to take split second
Yes.
decisions. In corporates, perhaps very rarely, we have such challenges. It's much easier in some ways. But yes, you never would have complete information in today's information age to believe, no matter how much you talk about quantum computing, the speed of processing and all of that, artificial intelligence to aid you and support you. At the end of the day, you have to take a call. And I think it is your internal sense of confidence, your link to the larger purpose and objective, and your risk-taking ability to say how much information is enough. You cannot also land up in being analysis paralysis mode where you keep on analyzing and the opportunity vanishes, because in today's world, opportunities have a very finite, lifespan. The
Yes.
first
Yes.
mover takes the advantage. And so therefore, you got to make judgment call. Every time you don't have to rush in where the angels fear to trade. But at the other end, you cannot be that no decision is also a decision. You can't always be guided by that framework.
I think that's a good message for people probably waiting to take a decision whether to get married, to buy their car, or even to buy a house. Because nowadays, with the choices that we have, I think, as you said, the analysis paralysis is quite significantly, evident when it comes to people delaying their decisions.
True, but Dr. Woolley, if I may add, if you have not taken significant decisions with risk in your personal life, I don't think you would be as good at taking those decisions for somebody else in a corporate life. I think in my entire career, perhaps since I took a lot of risks with myself, including, some of the moves lately I made, I think I'm programmed to be able to make a reasonably judgment call and take a few for what should my decision.
Sir, success stories always inspire us, but also setbacks from lives well lived are also one of the most valuable lessons that we need to learn from. So, would you share something significant? Either it's a professional disappointment or a decision that you took which didn't work out well, which reshaped your approach and what we can learn from it?
A lot of it. Again, like as I told you, if you're not taking risk in your life, you
Yes.
cannot take risk for the company. Similarly, if you're not failed in your life, you cannot
Yeah.
deal
Yeah.
with failures and disappointment. Uh, I don't know how you find my English. I hope I'm speaking correct English to you. But if I go back to my childhood, I went to an English elocution competition, and I could not speak beyond 30 seconds because English was not my mother tongue, not my first language, not my language of education, and I could not. And I took that in my stride. And the day when I was in England doing PhD, and I was invited to teach students there, I said, "Boy, those whose English is the mother tongue, you have come a long way to speak there." So disappointment and moments like that happen in life when you're trying to do a lot of things. Uh, Aditya Birla Group, in its own wisdom, one time decided to sell the fertilizer business out, which was under my watch that time. And I believed that we could turn it around significantly. It has a future. But my view was not shared by many colleagues internally. And it was a corporate decision to divest that. I always have felt disappointed about that. I still believe that it's connected to farmers. It would have had a great consumer connect in some ways for the other businesses of the group. But at the end of the day, corporate decision is a collective decision. It cannot be yours. But yeah, that remained as one. Similarly, on the carbon black, perhaps the specialty carbon black, I had a lot of hope that we could grow that business far more and could do far better. But I think that we overestimated the potential of that part of the business. It was a very small part of the global demand, and there was a stickiness of the customers to change and try different. And unless you spend significantly in R&D and innovation, you cannot really have meaningful breakthrough. Though we achieved in some other aspects, but perhaps within my watch, we did what we have two kinds of carbon black, the rubber black and the specialty black. We did not do too well in specialty black. That doesn't mean we destroyed value, but we didn't realize the potential we thought we would. But in rubber black, we did extremely well. And that always reminded me of this whole line that I read somewhere. It said, you can't marry the girl you love the girl you marry. So, to make specialty black successful, at least make the rubber black successful and, take your joy from that. And that's how I looked at it.
Wonderful, sir. Now, with the Aditya Birla Group, you played a significant role as the head of human resources. As I mentioned earlier, a group which has 150,000 employees is a very, very big group. And what were your non-negotiable cultural elements you insisted on? And how did you embed this across such a diverse organization as the head of human resources?
So I would just like to correct a small fact. As I left, I think we were perhaps around close to 360, 70,000 employees, direct and indirect, put together.
My estimate is way off.
Well, we
Sorry.
all know that, I feel a group perhaps is more than 40 countries now. You mentioned 36 in the number, I remember. But, these are dynamic numbers. They change. There's a lag in published numbers, etc. So I can't blame you for not knowing the numbers. Even I used to find it hard to keep track of it as I used to move. Uh, Data integrity is always a challenge in large systems, including national economies, etc. We often question Chinese data. I often question Indian data as well. Like are these the right numbers? It's always a challenge. But having come back to your question on how did we hold it together? First of all, I cannot take anything that I achieved in Aditya Birla Group personally as a credit of mine. It's always a collective game. It's a team game. Yes, you play a significant role. You make a difference in some ways. People give you credit, which is nice and good. But I think it's always a collective game. But having said that, we focused on the five values of the group that we had created. In an interesting framework, we had identified what should be our values that we should stick to: integrity, commitment, passion, seamlessness, and speed. You see, over 28 years, so ingrained the values have been in mind that I can't forget even after having moved out of the group in the last 1.5 years. And what we did is we did few things. Created awareness, education. We created assessment. We celebrated. We recognized different ways we embedded. To give an example, even in the appraisal process, we wrote, how do you rate your value orientation to every year? We ask this people the question on the five values. How do you rate yourself? Could you give examples? Now, many people in appraisal form never wrote examples. They put a rating. Even though they didn't put an example, I'm pretty sure even if 30, 40, 50% people thought about it, while tick marking and answering, that served the purpose. And many times we believe that is everybody giving themselves top mark on the values. We did research to find no, they do not. We also tried to do research to find out that are the managers, the reporting managers, blindly simply going with the value ratings of people, or are they scaling it up and scaling it down? There are many, many examples we found that the reporting managers scaled down the value rating of people on one value or more, or sometimes scaled it up to saying, hey, you have been too harsh with yourself. You have done well. So that for part of it. We similarly used to give value leaders award, people who have lived values, and other people notice it. And we not only give award if you're a value leader, one who noticed about you living the value and wrote to us about it, we also recognize. And the way we did it was anonymous rating of all the stories, then doing a poll amongst employees to say which is the most inspiring story. On completing a decade of the values, we published a book on the greatest stories of living values within the company that people have done. So, as I said, celebrating, recognizing, assessing, training, creating awareness, all of it took to uh, making that framework very strong foundation of the culture and not having any compromise.
As I was researching on similar lines, I found there was a study by the Gallup Foundation, if I'm not mistaken. It's a global analytics and advisory firm, which looked at how employees who receive regular meaningful feedback are 4 times more likely to be engaged at work. And you are a person who championed this throughout your career about the employee feedback. Is there anything as a method that you have evolved during your process there? And how important is feedback and how should feedback be given? Now, this is for people who are probably heading teams.
I think feedback is a gift. And it's up to you how well you receive that gift and how well you use it. Whether it naturally falls on your lap or you go looking for it. But I think my own personal way of giving feedback has evolved over a period of time, as many things about me have evolved. But many times I find that often I use a sense of humor, and people knew that if I made a joke about something, that's a feedback. So, uh, so,
I'll
so
be watchful of the. I'll be watchful of that during the
well, well,
conversation.
well, you don't present so many occasions to me. It's a short conversation, and I would resist any temptations. But having said that, yeah, humor can be a good way of giving feedback. It makes people think. And sometimes I say something jocularly and then later on say, hey, well, jokes apart, what do you think about that? People were used to that style of mine of doing it. Second is that many times I used to use questioning people, take them through, call it Socratic dialogue or whatever. I used to question 5 layers of going into a problem where it created suddenly the aha moment to say, this is what you were trying to tell me. Okay, understood, boss. I will do it this way or do it differently. So I deployed question as a method of, giving feedback. And third, obviously, I was quite good at plain speak. I would call an individual, say, hey, here is a problem. Here is the issue. Here is what is expectation. Here is what I think you seem to be getting right, not doing right. And so I think plain speak for me always has worked. And I must also admit that, all my feedback skills do not work at my home. They work at workplace better. I go to develop a different repertoire of giving feedback at home with my children or my wife and others. So, what works at work does not work at home. What works at home doesn't work at work. Some maybe sometimes do, but maybe the two worlds are very uniquely different worlds.
And when you give feedback, is it something in public that you need to do? What kind of feedback would you give in public? What kind of feedback would you give within closed walls? Because as a doctor, when I see senior doctors giving feedback to juniors, sometimes it's open in front of teams, whether in rounds or in the operation theater, and sometimes it's in closed doors. So, what kind of feedback should be given, and when, and how can it be more impactful?
It's a very interesting question. It's a very difficult question as well. First of all, back when and how you can give would depend on your nature of relationship and the context of trust and the climate of psychological safety that is there.
Yes, yes.
And how is your intent read? If other people, including the person receiving the feedback, reads my intent as putting you down, showing
Hostile,
you
yeah,
more light,
yeah.
hostile, unfair, uh, playing out a known kind of bad relationship, I think it can be very difficult. Therefore, 99% of the time, and suppose you got to give a feedback where the timing is of essence, then and there, on the spot, you doing a surgery where suppose you're stitching wrongly, you got to demonstrate it then and there, not after the patient has been stitched up. You cannot always do it. So it depends on the sensitivity of time as well. But as a thumb rule, what I would say, individual feedback must be done in private as much as possible. The team feedback can be done together. I used to practice it all the time, saying, suppose I had a significant meeting or a presentation to the chairman or whoever, I'll come back and call all the people connected and say, hey, let's discuss what went well, what didn't go well. Now that created a climate of safety that we are collectively engaging on what went well and didn't go well. We are not trying to force and blame on somebody. Arising out of that, I may land up saying, hey, when you made that presentation, that slide, you didn't answer that question too well. You think you would have answered that question better? You know, Now, I'm not saying that, you are a wretched guy. So I think the art of feedback is not focusing on the individual. It is about the activity, the event, the incident, the behavior. If we can isolate the individual from the subject matter of feedback, I think it is much better well received. But as I said, if the climate of trust and psychological safety is not there, no matter how you do, where you do, it doesn't work.
Well said, sir. In fact, this entire concept of feedback is something so complex. You explained it so well. Thank you very much. Now, moving forward to a question which, again, as a leader, you have mentored numerous professionals. You have made young people grow up into great leaders. How do you identify this high potential talent in a young person who is, say, 20, 25-year old, and which might not be very obvious at that time to everyone?
And I think, as I said, you need to be observant about people. You need to kind of high speed process data about people to notice somebody's drive, somebody's attitude to taking initiatives, risk taking, whether they have a solid core, they're thoughtful. You know, people are all the time at workplace are demonstrating behaviors and emitting signals that you can pick up to come to conclusions about that. I remember in Indian Institute of Foreign Trade many years ago, there was a group discussion I was holding to select management trainees, and one guy didn't speak at all. And I picked on him. I said, "Hey, you didn't say anything about it." He said something. I shortlisted him for the interview round, and finally he got selected. You know, from not speaking anything, something told me that this guy had that. And similarly, many times I've taken risks with talents of different kind in the organization. Because somewhere in my gut now, if you ask me to define what my gut is, I can't show it to you. It's not there. But there is something in the gut that tells you about something about individuals. Sometimes you can go wrong, but every time you go wrong, it just adds to your natural and artificial intelligence, whatever you call it, innate intelligence. And the innate gut gets refined to again take better bets and discern. But I look at few behavioral traits. Is there humility? Is there willingness to learn and connect with others? Is the person fundamentally thoughtful? Is the core very solid? That's there. So all of that kind of I think of, and then I take my bet.
And what about the common blind spots that people might end up kind of not seeing in their career progression? And how do we overcome this limitation? Now, people might have all these qualities that you mentioned, but if they're not sure of these blind spots, they might commit errors or they might commit blunders in their career.
Yeah, that's why feedback is important, that you are not operating in a blind spot and you receiving this response from others and you're able to see yourself in perspective. Then there are a few blind spots that most of us carry, different proportions. And if I could describe that, one of which is that all of us overestimate ourselves in the short run, underestimate ourselves in the long run. That's a blind spot with most people. Similarly, many senior people are unaware that other people's adulation for you is adulation for you in that position and not necessarily adulation for you, the person. The position goes, the adulation goes. A lot of senior people get carried away with this whole sense of adulation around them, not realizing that the adulation of most of them is for you in that position and not necessarily you. And way you got markers and signals to figure out that is the adulation for you, the person, then you will be better off because you don't get the shock when you move out of the position because your bank of goodwill is intact and large enough where people connect with you because of who you are, not because the position you hold or you could hold. So I think that's the second, big area that people have a problem with. Third is that everybody talks about change without themselves demonstrating that they are willing to change themselves. And the last blind spot is people believe that others believe what they say rather than what they do, and forget that people are watching what you do rather than what you say. So I think there are several such major kind of blind spots people suffer from. And individual cases, there could be many more as well. But I think these are broad four patterns that I have noticed with many senior executives, middle level executives, and others. And the way to deal with it is this whole process of communication, feedback, engagement with the wider world, where you see many models of success, many models of excellence, and you don't get convinced that your model only is the best one in the world. You are God's gift to mankind. You need to engage with the wider world and get exposed to realize that there's so many models of excellence and success, and people are so much far better than you. That keeps you both grounded and maybe more self-aware and more hungry to keep on discovering yourself.
This is a very good insight, sir. In fact, I was just thinking about every sentence that you spoke in detail about how you mentioned these blind spots, and people building their careers probably need to rewatch this part of the episode once again because it has a lot of insights. Thank you very much.
I will just take one quick example and not name. A senior surgeon recently I was had occasion to interact with. He was operating in a third hospital, not his own hospital. And he happened to mention that if I were doing this same surgery in my hospital, I would have done it in 2 hours. Here it took 4 hours. That tells us about how your team is important for your success,
Very much, very
how your
much.
natural ecosystem, and you are a doctor, you must be seeing it every day, how your natural ecosystem is so important for your success. So one of the major weakness is in how much of your success you attribute to yourself, how much to other people, how much to the circumstances, how much to your destiny, your luck.
And there's a very important thing which you mentioned there, which I would like to revisit, is examples of lives well lived. Now, the reason why we started this podcast was to highlight lives such as yours as great examples to people, because unless we know what is a good life, we can't aspire to one. And I think in this present day, especially with the kind of distractions that youngsters are having with the social media, uh, I think they might not be exposed to what a good life is, to aspire to have a good life.
And there's no
Uh,
one model of a good life.
no, one. I'm talking about good lives. Good
Yeah.
lives. When people talk about, you know,
Also, there's also one awareness is possible that all that glitters is not gold. What
it's true.
looks like a good life is built on sacrifice of a lot of people, a lot of struggle, a lot of suffering. What today appears to be a good life, and because of which you invite me or anybody else on this podcast, you see the semi-finished end product because of which it looks good today. But behind that, there's a lot of debris. There is suffering, there's sacrifice, there's pain of other people's contributions, and therefore, what stage you choose, the
Yes,
the the fixed frame
definition,
of that good life is a different
definition of
question.
it's an evolving thing. Yeah, thank you. Now, uh, we did discuss earlier of your move from the academia to the corporate role. And recently, you've had another big transition from the corporate leadership role to politics and serving people. Uh, what aspects of this transition surprised you the most, both positively and negatively?
Well, the pleasant experience was that I could connect to masses and ordinary part of the world that I came from originally with equal ease as I could do in my earlier life. People thought from corporate boardrooms, air conditioning environment, I cannot campaign. I campaign at 46-degree temperature, 9, 10 hours a day, hot sun. I connected. I walked. I met all kinds of people. I could speak their own language and understand and relate. They related to me. 40 years later, I was returning to Odisha and got barely 40 days to campaign, but I secured 4,74,000 votes from people. They reposed their confidence in. So to an extent, that was easy transition. I tried to practice something that I learned in corporate sector doesn't work. I learned also, for example, on a huge bike rally, they had got only one helmet because they believed that my team had told them, without helmet, I will not get onto the bike. And everyone was laughing around me that there was whole photo is there. The mass of people on bikes. I'm the only guy with a helmet and laughing and waving at people. But after 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I had to give up the helmet because I realized as people stopped me to garland me, the garland is small enough that with the helmet it doesn't go in. Now they're not happy with handing over. They want to put it on you. So I had to take off the helmet to receive, and I couldn't keep on doing it every time on a rally. It was so there was unique circumstances, interesting circumstances. I had to learn and adapt my style of doing it. Like, for example, I'm very punctual. In politics, punctuality is not a very desirable trait, or you are a big leader, you are more fashionable if you arrive fashionably significantly late. People expect you to be late. They're shocked to find you on time, and they're unprepared to receive you
They are unprepared to
on time.
receive.
So those were also very, surprising transitions I had to make. Sometimes I tried to help people to learn to be punctual. Sometimes they were cynical and people laughed. But over a period of time, I've realized one colleague of mine in the party, a leader, he has given me a nickname called Time Babu. Meaning thereby I stick to time and tell everybody about time. I'm happy to have such a, pseudonym or nickname or whatever you call it as Time Babu, which means that my obsession about time, respect for time and punctuality is making an impact. At the end of the day, you are in public life to make a difference, make an impact and create a positive value. So, it has been a great, great, exciting learning experience.
And what's your vision, sir, which is driving your political aspirations for Odisha?
So the vision started with me trying to give back to the home state that gave me so much. I ask myself the question that with 4.5 crore population, why can't Odisha be a Singapore or a Dubai or an Israel or even better than that? Why can't Odisha be the lighthouse for India in terms of many things? Naveen Patnaik, my party president, who was 24 years the chief minister, from his date of joining till he relinquished office, he brought down 70% of population being below poverty line to 10% being poverty line over 24 years. Is possible. Odisha is rich in minerals. A lot of educated people that have gone out, like me or far better than me, have done well. A lot of accumulated experience in industry, in administration, in science, technology that is out there. There is a lot of evolved thinking there with Lord Jagannath's culture and his willingness to come out on a Rath Yatra to embrace everybody. And instead of people flocking the Lord flocks and comes to people. Now there's a cultural richness, there is mineral, natural resource richness, there is educational richness. Despite that, it remained poor for a long many years and continues to have significant challenges. How do I transform and how could I create opportunity for hundreds of thousands of people like me who are much younger as I was 30, 40
Yeah,
years ago? I
yeah.
could get an opportunity. I could come and do something for myself. Why can't hundreds of young people in Odisha have similar opportunity, can similarly flourish? That's the vision that drives me for Odisha.
And sir, how do you hope to leverage your unique background, of heading big teams in corporate worlds to address these challenges?
Look, I think in a corporation also you have to have a certain vision. You have to mobilize resources. You got to form teams. You got to influence people, resolve conflict. You got to be committed. You got to be resilient. You got to be adaptable. You got to communicate your vision and seek people's support. In nation building, state building, in politics, public service, you have to do exactly the same. You need to have a vision. You need to mobilize resources, people. You got to influence people. You got to gain their confidence and trust, and you kind of stay resilient and be adaptable. I think the skill sets required are not very different. I have fortunately had great experience, accumulated a lot of that. And I believe that can be leveraged into different contexts. Like, is the same cricketer who plays the test cricket, T20, 50-50 match. You have the core skills. You adapt it to the match that you are playing. And I think between corporate and politics, same thing happens.
Thank you. And as we move ahead with the artificial intelligence being the buzzword in everything that we are doing nowadays, uh, leadership skills, what do you believe will be the most essential when it comes to the next decade? I'm not even talking about next decade, probably even a few years because we are changing so much, which has to be the core leadership skills as technology continues to transform organizations across the world.
One part of it is the skill being able to zoom in and zoom out. You should be able to go into details and deep and yet take a broader view of things. I think that's going to be a very important skill. Today, with cameras and many things, we can zoom out, zoom in with your fingers, zoom in, zoom out. Can you get your mind to zoom in and zoom out? That skill is very important. Second is obviously adaptability. The world is changing. It's not you don't step into the same water twice, and therefore, can you learn, relearn, and adapt? And resilience. That there are things that you'll try would not work, and can you come back to never say never die? And, can you keep coming back and be resilient? So resilience, adaptability, zooming in, zooming out, the mindset of learning and humility, and lastly and most importantly, perhaps the good old fashioned philosophical orientation of Gita. Karmanya Vadika Raste Ma Phaleshu Kadachan. You cannot be attached to the outcome. You got to do what you need to do to the best of your ability, and some things are not in your control. So I believe that in this chaotic world around, where not everything can be your control, even a fragment cannot be in your control, you need to have a philosophical orientation to life, to your work, to the outcome of your work, the impact of your work. It truly, other than perhaps unless you have filed a legal patent, you do not own anything in this world. Even your own creation, you do not own. So how do you have that sense of attached detachment, as I call it?
Yeah, yeah.
You are there or not there. How do you practice that? But I believe the ability to look at issues philosophically is also going to be important for very big leaders.
Good message there, sir. Thank you. Now, regarding your reading habits, a leader such as you, with multiple PhDs, gold medals, I'm very curious regarding your reading habits. Any specific time of the day that you read, the kind of books that you read? How do you go about picking up new information?
Well, I think first of all, I can read anything and everything. So
Yes.
and see there are lots of books at my back. There are thousands of books in my farmhouse, which I don't have space here, and I moved them out. Every 2 3 days, I receive a book as a gift from somebody or the other, for whatever reason. I have a group of friends who are voracious readers. They always write on in our WhatsApp group, summarize and start conversations, debates, and issues. So I get very well informed, even without having to read something. So what the subject is. And when I pick up an interest, then I go and look more about it as to what they're talking about and what the. I like to go back to the original source of anything.
Yes. Yes.
And my greatest thrill always in life has been in terms of reading is biographies. I enjoy reading biographies. And biographies, I have a combination of history and life and personal story and my liberal arts background, as I told you, they bring a bit of economics, psychology, sociology, all of that into biographies are there. So yeah, I don't have a fixed time to read because corporate life was very challenging in terms of time. In political life and public life, you often don't have control over your time, which in corporate you could do. And therefore now I more opportunistically read, but yes, I read a lot because a lot more reading has shifted from books and magazines in physical form to digital reading because on the go
Yes.
you can read it now. And nowadays there are services that tell you a synopsis and tell you the reading time is 5 minutes, 3.5 minutes. I enjoy reading.
Now, I know you earlier answered my question about what was your favorite movie by saying that there are multiple movies that you loved, but would I have to expect the same kind of answer with books? Any specific books that you would recommend our listeners that would change their lives?
My early years was all about mythology and stories. They had a great impact on me.
Yes,
Indian
yes,
mythology stories. I have read one storybook called Lokagalp Sanchan. He was a Odisha professor. He wrote, and it has 800 pages. I read that book 3 4 times. I knew stories. Each story I knew. And similarly, Mahabharata. I read quite a lot about it, and many times. Ramayana. So I think mythologies had their own place. Then one of the early biographies I read was about John F. Kennedy's biography. Continue to read like Long Walk to Freedom of Nelson Mandela. Gandhiji's My Experiments with Truth. I read Nehru's letter from a father to a daughter. All kinds of things. So each one of them have something to offer. Um, you can't just Barack Obama's Michelle Obama's story I wrote
yeah, yeah,
about.
yeah.
So, I think and there's lots to read about it. Richard Branson's story I read about. So I did many. Latest biography of Ratan Tata, late Ratan Tata has come out. I've not read it, but I will read.
And any fiction books that have impressed you?
always, Frederick Forsyth, who died recently, if I remember, to many other novelists, Ernest Hemingway, from Old Man and the Sea to many others. So I have a very eclectic taste in reading. I don't stick to a particular genre. As I told you, I can read anything. And the first few pages must interest me. Then I'm onto it.
And also, coming to your morning routine, sir, most of the successful leaders have a very specific routine, especially the first 2 hours of day. Is there anything that you have, especially with a career that, such as yours, an intense career, how you manage that first 2 hours? Has it made an impact, and what do you do?
Well, unfortunately, I wouldn't say that I have a rigorous regime for how I do it. BJD government had a 5T framework of governance, and that worked well last government they introduced. But I was thinking there are 5 T's in the morning that I live with: the tea, the toilet, the tabloid, the training, and the thinking. The tabloid is basically newspapers. Sometimes read,
Newspaper, yeah.
sometimes is the thinking. And training is sometimes my physical trainer is there, a little bit of treadmill, a little bit of weights, or some pranayam or whatever. So I train a little bit to keep my body going, mind going, and then thoughts. Often I start the day with a little bit of thoughts as what's ahead in the day, ahead in the week, what issues I could reflect enough, and what I reflected last yesterday. Is it good enough? Or I need to think about more. The morning calm provides me little more thinking time. Some of my most creative work I do early morning. I sometimes sit down and if I have to write something, nowadays I do it on phone, otherwise on the laptop or iPad. I do writing if I need to put my thoughts together on something.
And how do you manage energy? The discussion always is about work-life balance, right? As a person who's been in the HR, you probably understand this really well about how people complain about, I don't have enough of life, I'm always working, or you tend to hear this more, especially when people work hard nowadays. So, how do you manage energy? I'm not going to ask you how you manage time, but I feel it's all about balance is about managing energy.
I think the energy is all about that. Are you driven by a larger sense of purpose that keeps you excited about what you're doing? And I always ask myself that am I doing something whereby can I create a positive value? Can I move the needle for someone or something? Is it something that is meaningful for me? Is it challenging? And I don't take work as work. I don't see this distinction called work life. Work is an integral part of life. And I don't see work as a burden. I believe work is this conversation with you. I don't know. Is it work? Is it life? Is it what? But I see that this moment I need to be present with you and get the best for myself and serve the purpose for which you are holding the podcast, where to move the needle to create in front of people another model of what they could see as life or a life lived in a certain way. So I think it is that larger purpose of saying I need to move the needle positively for someone or something. That always gets me the energy. And I believe that anything that is worth doing it well. Now that also creates energy. So I go to do some research, go further, like redraft, correct, or rethink about it is because, well, if it is worth doing it well. So, that's what gets my energy.
All of us have hobbies. I love collecting books or things like fountain pens. Is there anything in your life that you always relished as a hobby, either collections or any interests?
In my early life, I used to be in philately, used to collect postal stamps.
Okay.
Mails have killed postage, so it has gone to history. In student and professional career, I collected a lot of medals and awards.
Okay.
And as political leader, lately I seem to be collecting a lot of trolls from my opponents and others who do not like me. Uh, what jokes apart, I must say, I have the richest collection of fond memories. And these are not visible, you cannot touch it, you can see it, but those are the treasure that are deep down within me that I can go back to and I can touch and feel them. And the close to 3 decades in Aditya Birla Group and creating that organization, seeing it grow from 1.6 billion to 64 billion as I left. And I think I have the richest collection of fond memories. And that's the richest collection one can have really in life. because all others can be destroyed, burnt, lost, or whatever. But those memories always create new energy, new excitement, joy, bring a smile to your face as you think about them. Sometimes you laugh at yourself, saying how stupid and foolish you could have been. But I think that's my richest collection.
The other important aspect which I wanted to discuss with you, especially in the mindset of youngsters listening to this conversation, is the importance of family. What do you have to say about this, sir?
Well, I think there are different phases of family one has. First is your parents and siblings. Parents are the foundation, and their blessing, their good wishes, their support, their nurturing fundamentally shapes who you are. But then, you know, you come to a stage where you get married, you have your own children. Now, your wife can be an unabashed critique of you and hold you the mirror, no matter how big an individual you are. She's always able to show you something that you're doing wrong or could do better.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's a phenomenal value. Family brings you tranquility, peace, a sense of support. And sometimes you evolve from being no one when your spouse comes to your life and stays with you till when you became someone. And that journey, you share that credit. Like my wife, Alka, she was a civil servant, and she has that profound influence on the way I think and do. Her positivity is infectious. Her own worldview is very different from me. We never agree on anything. But whether I confess to her or not, at my quiet moment, I know that some of the points she made was she is right. Children, they can be great reverse mentors today. For example, I learned from my children how the technology, how to use ChatGPT, Perplexity, how to do this, how to do that, how to get myself smarter on editing out unwanted photos and messages, WhatsApp smartness, anything of technology or even finance or investing, that I learned from my children. They become reverse mentors. So, they can be a source of inspiration, encouragement, calm, quiet, source of learning. Family can be everything to you if you can leverage what family offers.
Yeah, that's a lovely message, actually. And to just end the podcast, I know it's been a 1 hour, 10, 12 minutes of wonderful conversation. I'll come back to the same question about movies and probably add that little extra thing to it about music. All of us unwind in our own way, either with music or watching a movie. So, again, would you like to share what you love listening to nowadays, or
So,
what you
I'm
enjoy
also
watching?
very fond of poetry, Sanskrit,
Okay.
Hindi, Urdu poetry. Any poetry, I love it, particularly if there's a touching message in there, that kind of speaks to my heart and my soul, and I love it. And some of the poetry comes in form of ghazals, old Hindi music, Kishore Kumar.
Yes.
Ghazals, Pankaj Udas, I used to listen a lot. Others more classic, used to perhaps listen to Mohammed
Gulab Ali.
or others, but Pankaj Udas was my favorite. I do not understand English music, I must admit. Half the lyrics I don't understand. So I'm not a great fan of English music. What about Stevie Wonder's here, Oprah, Bruce Springsteen, Beatles? I know about the names and they exist in the genre of music, but I don't honestly, I must say, English music I don't enjoy too much. I do enjoy instrumental music, saxophone in particular. You asked me about a movie recently on Netflix. I watched a movie called Aap Jaisa Koi. In there, I found the hero and heroine had a jugalbandi with the heroine on piano and the hero is on sitar. And obviously, they were not playing it actually, somebody else was playing it. But the point was, it was a great jugalbandi. And, instrumental music enthralls me. Tabla Maestro was alive, Zakir Hussain. I've been to a few concerts with him playing with several celebrated artists, and they create the fusion music together, and that was outstanding. So I do not have a particular genre again preference. And that's what I tell you that my eclectic liberal arts thing has prepared me to enjoy anything and everything, whether it is reading many things or anything, music, movies. So, I don't typecast therefore my taste and preference into a particular one.
Thank you, sir. It's been a wonderful conversation. So, Dr. Mishra, you have illuminated so many parts today in the last 1 hour and 15 minutes, from the corridors of the Aditya Birla Group to the campaign trails in Odisha. You mentioned so many different valuable points, insights. If someone is listening to this and are at their own crossroads, as I might say, whether it's career, family, or anything else, what's that one light you would want them to carry forward?
Well, I believe that life is a celebration. Every moment of it opportunity provides an opportunity to celebrate something or the other. So convert it into a celebration every moment in your life. There's so much to celebrate in anyone's life. So please do celebrate and thank your stars and Lord, your parents, your family for making your life so joyful, so productive, so positive.
Thank you very much, sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the beauty of a life well lived. It's to become a lighthouse, a beacon for others, as Dr. Mishra has proved. And also, as his message, in the final last few minutes, kind of exemplifies whatever he's done about how to celebrate a life. So, sir, thank you for taking time off from your busy schedule and sharing that light with us today and with our listeners. And to all our listeners, keep seeking those moments that illuminate your life and keep learning and enjoy and celebrate life. Thank you, Dr. Mishra. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Dr. Mali. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.